Hi, my name is Reverend Charity Omartian. I'm creating this video for the application of the Next Generation Leadership Initiative. The first question that I will be responding to is, how has God called you to the ministry, the parish, and the United Church of Christ? This is a question that we are often asked many times as we go through the seminarian process, or even just to give testimonials in your life. My journey started as a very young little girl, 6-year-old, who was discovering that other people went to church, and I wanted to know what that was like. And my parents didn't go to church because there was conflict as to which church to go to, whether it was Methodist or Catholic. And they also struggled with the question, why do bad things happen to people? Because I had also gotten sick as an infant, and my mother couldn't find purposeness in that happening. And so her little girl, the same one that she was really thinking about these theodicy questions, asked the question, why don't we go? And instead of answering the question, they found a church that was in the town that could be a middle way for both my mother and my father, and a place that my brother and I could call home. And that was the Congregational Church of Hollis. When we first came to Hollis, it was just a congregational church. It had yet to join the United Church of Christ. It was a place where many of the people in town went, and my parents found it a place where they could really find their faith in looking at the way we do mission and justice. At the same time, I also would go to the local Baptist church with some of my friends as well. And I think that the differences between the two was the memorizing of scripture and the focusing on the scripture in a more literal way. But as a child, I just got a very good education and going to church many times. The time that I started to really find my gifts and find my voice was by the time I was 13. I was teaching Sunday school, and then finally I was asked to join in youth cabinet for New Hampshire, and it was life-giving. I started to really find that there was a purpose for the scriptures that I really truly felt called to me, and I started to see how the United Church of Christ truly was a place of wanting to unite all churches and all people, wanting to have a place where people could really vary in the way they believed and the way they talked about their beliefs, in the struggles of having friends who were gay, and really seeing that there wasn't any reason for them to be excluded from this ministry, because Jesus included everyone. And I started to fall in love with how we came together, and even when we struggled in how to behave with one another. Because let's be honest, in church, we are humans. We are humans trying to follow God's priorities the best we can and discover what those are every day. And so around when I was 17, I was still struggling with my sense of security, of feeling valued. And this is a normal feeling for many of our teenagers, for many of our children who are struggling to see who they are in God's eyes. And I was asked to go to a leadership conference when I was 17. And I hadn't yet thought I would be a minister at this point, but I did think I would be a missionary. And when asked as a child what you would do for missions, I thought I would just dance for them. there's ministry to do and missions to do here, and I'm not dancing for everyone, but I am participating in their life and meeting them where they are. So I have felt called not to be the one who tells people what they're not doing, but to enter into their life and meet them where they are at and be willing to stand in the suffering, whether that is as a chaplain or a pastor, and to allow trust to be built slowly so that we can eventually work together to co-create in what God is doing with us. And in our meekness, in our mercy, in our forgiveness from God, we find peace and we find a place for everyone. And I love that we are the united and uniting church, not one that feels as though we have got it all or we have it figured out, but one that we are continuing to move on this journey together. The next question that I am responding to is share the core purpose of your life through one of these lenses: vision, why you do what you do; mission, what you do; or the core values of how you do what you do. It took me quite a long time to really think and process this. I remember someone giving me great advice that said, oh, you need to have your brand. What is your brand? And I think my only brand is really through the same question of what is your core purpose of life, and using one of these lenses. And I think that vision might be the best way to describe my brand or my core purpose in life. I think all of us are longing for purpose and meaning in our life. Why does my life matter? Am I special? Am I capable of making a difference? Are my gifts special enough? Am I a good person? These are just some of the questions I think we are all looking to ask, and hopefully we find answers. And when people find meaning in themselves and others, the community and the culture just changes. Life happens. Everything is transformed. And I think that's why Jesus wants us to not only love our neighbors, but to love ourselves as well. But of course, there is a fine line, because Jesus also reminds us that if you want to follow him, you have to deny yourself and pick up the cross. We are able to see growth and to be a part of that growth when we have found this sort of purpose. And my purpose is to be present with others, listening and observing the gifts given to them by God. It is to create space, sacred space, room for people to be in the place that they are at, where God came into this world and encountered us where we are. That is the way I find my purpose, is to meet people where they are. And then I hope to inspire and to teach through the lens of faith, of our faith, the faith that God has given us, and to be willing to really think about the faith and think about the scriptures, and also feel what the scriptures are calling us. It is the hope of the community to experience God's grace, hope, and love and joy, even when there is suffering, especially when there is suffering and pain. This is where I find my vocation. I find that both systems and individuals are in pain, and it is our job to be willing to sit in those places, even though it hurts, even though it reminds us of our own pain and suffering, and know that we are not God, that we are not the change agent, but we are the ones that God has called us to sit in those places, to hear the stories, to be with one another. The next question that I want to respond to is: choose a biblical text and give specific examples on how it calls you and your congregation to faithful and fruitful ministry. I just want to begin by saying this is incredibly difficult to ask a pastor to pick only one scripture to reflect their congregation and themselves is tough, but I will try to remain within the limits that I have been given. So the scripture that I've picked is a very well-known scripture. It's 1 Corinthians 12. There's only a couple of verses that I'm going to take out, which normally I wouldn't do that, but we are very limited on time. And so the first verse is verse 14. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not, for that reason, stop being part of the body. And if you skip down to verse 21, it says, the eye cannot say then to the hand, I do not need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And the parts that we think that are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And then going to verse 26, if one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. I'm new to my congregation, and I've only been here about 2 weeks. And before I even showed up, I asked them, can I go and be part of this leadership initiative? Their response to me was, absolutely. We want you to find ways to feel as though you can get more education and spiritual enrichment so that you can help guide us and we can be on this journey with you. See, I think that often we put our pastors on a pedestal and they are somehow special, and we think that this has to be a lonely existence because we are somehow set apart. However, in order to do the ministry that we have been called to, we need to embody what it is that this scripture has said. We need to embody it and say, no, I might be the hand that we need, but you're also the foot that we need. And I can't say, well, I'm not a foot, so I don't really belong here, which as Congregationalists, we love the word autonomy. As a New Englander, we love the word autonomy. However, we can't be autonomous. The body cannot function. And even though we have proved that you can go missing a hand, the hand can still you can still tell it's not there. And we have these things called phantom pains. But what's most important is that we work together, that we realize that I have a different gift, you have a different gift, and all of those fruits of the Spirit are important, that we work together in order to do those things. So in my context, it's us as a community learning one another's gifts, knowing who it is that sits next to us in the pews, and inviting others to be in that space no matter where they are in this journey. It's also getting out of the church, going out to the people and finding out what is it that we can do to have you feel as though you are also part of this body. Being ecumenical sensitive and participating with all of those denominations, and hearing about what it is that they do also is part of that. Listening and being in those spaces, and realizing that we are one body, but it doesn't mean that we are sort of assumed into this thing and that we're not all special. But we are all special because we are God's beloved children. But that does include all of us. So some ways that this church is working on that, they do music to invite people into to the congregation. They go out to the different places to invite others to come here. One place is there's a homeless area where they kind of camp out, and they actually go to that area and say, we'll drive you, do you want to come? And there's no pressure. There are some other ways that looking forward, we're hoping that in this new relationship that as I'm getting to know them and they're getting to know me and we're getting to know the community, that we will come up with even more specific examples of how we're going to live this out, of the invitation that we're all part of this. The next question I will respond to is, what leadership lessons have proven valuable in your ministry? The first lesson that I find valuable is the gift of presence. There are many times when simply words are just not enough, but presence is. Being able to be in that space it's so important, and not just for the person, but also for myself. I have found God in those sacred places of waiting and being with one another. And it creates a place of safety when there isn't that feeling. And I think that's what God is calling us to. Another important lesson is community. We cannot do this alone. And as I've said in another question, we can often put ourselves as up on a pedestal, but it's that we're somehow alone and we're just doing it. And but it's important to come arm in arm and be with one another, and the value of asking for help and wisdom of those who have gone before you is extremely important. And often when you're new in ministry, you can forget how important it is to not just do it on your own and to be in this community. And especially citing that God is there in that community and is always guiding you and giving you the strength you need. Another lesson of mine is the importance of encouraging voice. There are so many voices of fear and that we're not good enough, that often people just want to be loved. And I found that those people who sometimes attack us or make us feel as though what we're doing is wrong are the ones who need the most love. When Jesus asked us to love our enemy, it was the best wisdom one could have in this world and in ministry, because they are who need to be loved. We are who need to be loved. I am who needs to be loved. And we find that. And encouraging voice and enthusiasm goes a long way. My final, yet not even close to the last lesson that I've learned in ministry is that in leadership, one needs to have patience. It's important to let time be time, not to rush it. The whole world is rushing around you, but we don't have to. We can just wait. There's a reason it is the fruit of the Spirit, and it is because patience sometimes brings forth something we didn't expect, and that something unexpected could be exactly what we needed when we needed it. The next question that I'm going to respond to is, what spiritual practices do you engage in that deepen your faith and nurture your resiliency for ministry? One of those practices that I engage in is continual prayer. I am a mother of 3 children, and there is lots to do, and I don't really have time to just stop all the time. So I try to come and be in continual conversation with God. So if I'm doing the dishes because they need to be done, I try to spend that time in prayer. Think about people that I want to pray for, and I try to think about those that maybe they have to wash their dishes in without a dishwasher. and think about the blessings that I do have. And that, maybe it's even in the car. If I'm frustrated, I have a conversation with God about that frustration. Or if I'm excited, I try to have a conversation with God about how excited I am and how that's what I want to do. The next practice that I do is that I try to be very protective of my time, and meaning that a time off is time off. And if I find that a day that I have set as time off is now not my day off, then I have a day off somewhere else in that same exact week. When I allowed myself in my first go to go, 7 days without a day off, actually I think 9 at times, it was extremely unhealthy. And I could find myself just feeling really worn. And even at times relishing in the fact that I was worn because I lasted that long. And I realized how unhealthy that practice really was. So finding space, so I created a weekend off that's not on the weekend. So I get 2 days, consecutive days, that are for me and my family, and doing me and my family stuff. And trying to keep whatever thoughts that I have, and if they're about God, it is about God. It's not about the congregation or whatever their needs are, or our needs. And another practice that I do is I read, and I listen because I'm dyslexic, and I listen to diverse books, both nonfiction and fiction, and diversity of thought, so that I can keep an open mind and be present to all the voices that are really happening in our world. And other practices are exercise, watching what I eat, and meditating. I love yoga and Pilates and family adventures. I love them. Go someplace we have never gone, go on hikes, go whatever it may be. A family adventure is awesome, and taking time for myself so that it is not just mom, wife, or pastor, but Charity as the created child of God. The final question that I will respond to is, what would it look like for a cohort of colleagues to encourage and challenge one another in ministry? For us to do this work, it means that we have to be open and honest with one another and with ourselves. It means that we need to create a safe space for us to be engaged, be thoughtful, and to really let the Spirit move us. It is a place where we truly live in a place that is the fruits of the Spirit, where we are patient with one another, where we are honest, and where we truly are willing to go into the places that normally we don't want to. And more importantly, that when we challenge one another, when we hear something that we want to know more about, that we wonder about, that we don't just lift it up, but we walk with one another. And we are asked to be in those places together. And that's a place of building trust. And by doing that with one another, we can build trust with our community that we lead, and allow for our community to then go and lead and be a part of the community and build trust and relationship. And I find that my experiences in clinical pastoral education, where I had 3 different cohorts, and it was built on trust. It was built on being challenged and being open and honest, but it was also very hard work. And my expectation is to learn. It is my expectation to participate. It is my expectation that it'll be difficult. And I look forward to that. And I look forward to just having the experience of being with others who really want to do this ministry, who love to do the ministry, who look and say, there is nothing else I would rather do than to be called to be a part of this crazy world where we enter into sacred spaces where others won't, or others are afraid to. And that's where we're going to go. And I look forward to it. So thank you very much for allowing me to present these videos. And I just hope you have a blessed day and week and year, wherever this finds you. Take care.